Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodian of the land we meet today and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Then I pay my special respect to all the fallen heroes from Spring Revolution in Myanmar. I also thank this man AMI presenter, Dr. Tual Sawn Khai and Dr. Eve Lester. I appreciate all our participants from different parts of the world to join the AMI seminar today. Our AMI secretary, Joe Lobiango, will open the meeting. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. Can everyone hear me well? Welcome everybody. The September seminar of the Australia-Myanmar Institute is kicking off. Our topic tonight is undocumented Myanmar migrants in Thailand and India. We have two very fine speakers. They're going to each speak for 15 minutes. I'll introduce both of them now and then just call them in when it's their turn to talk. And then we should still have 20 minutes, I think, for Q&A. We can always push out another 5 or 10 minutes if we wish, but our aim is to close at 7. So our first presenter is Dr. Tual Sawn Khai, who is the Australia-Myanmar 2024 Visiting Fellow at Melbourne University and ANU. Tual obtained his PhD in Sociology and Social Policy at Lingnan University in Hong Kong. His research interests include social epidemiology, conflict, human rights, migration, aging, mental health, disability, and climate change. A remarkable list. He's published in the Journal of Migration and Health, Archives of Public Policy, Disability and Society, Environmental Research and Public Health, Burmese Studies, and other prestigious outlets, and has extensive experience in social development, humanitarian relief, and through civil society organizations and government in Myanmar. So thank you very much for joining us. And I'll just mention the bio of our second speaker, who is Dr. Eve Lester. And I'll call them by their first names. It'll be Tual and Eve, but Dr. Eve Lester, who's associated with the ANU College, that's Australian National University College of Law and Jesuit Refugee Services. As a public and international lawyer, she has extensive background in refugee, migration, and human rights law, policy and practice spanning more than 30 years. As an academic, consultant, and government advisor, Eve brings diverse experiences to this discussion, and we're very grateful that she's accepted to join us, including more than 50 publications. Her refugee work in Cambodia for the UN, Amnesty, Human Rights First, etc., combine academic and practitioner perspectives, and she will speak after Tual has spoken. So I invite Tual, would you kick us off, please?
Thank you, Joe.
Yes. Thank you so much. Let me share my slide. Can you see my slide?
Yes, perfectly well.
Okay, let me do it a presenter slide.
Maybe activated, yes.
So sorry that today I'm going to present with Professor Eve about the Myanmar undocumented migrants in Thailand, India. So I suppose I get around 15 minutes, right?
15 minutes, yes.
Yes. So the number of the migrants or undocumented migrants in Thailand, according to the UNDP recent report, is 3 to 5 million undocumented migrants currently in Thailand. And the majority of those population of younger individual, young population, and who are lacking in formal education, and they got a lot of exploitation and poor working condition. On the other hand, before the military coup in Myanmar, we can say there is no undocumented migrants in India. After the coup happens, because of the civil wars or the indiscriminate attacks happens in across the country, especially in Chin State and Sakai region. Over 86,000 displaced to India for seeking asylum protection. So, according to the research reports, undocumented migrants in Thailand are particularly they are vulnerable to discrimination, exploitation, and marginalization, and they can be asked for bribes, for protection, informal protection. They need to purchase like a police card, especially in Mesa. If they don't have that like police card, they have to pay every month like 300 baht to the police officer so that they can get a protection and they wouldn't be arrested. Uh, Otherwise, they will be deported or tortured in detention center. So the major challenge faced by undocumented migrants in Thailand is fear of deportation and limited mobility, and especially exploitation by employer and discrimination in the workplace. Another challenge is about the healthcare because of they are not eligible to purchase the government health insurance. In Thailand, in Mesau and other parts, some area only my M-Fund health insurance is applicable. You can purchase M-Fund so that you can have healthcare in some partner with partner hospital with the M-Fund organization. Another thing is about struggling. They have the lack of employment opportunity force them many people are making to meet their basic needs. As I mentioned earlier, financial exploitation because of the price protection that they have to pay for the law enforcement. Moreover, aside from different challenges they face in Thailand, the Myanmar military is giving an additional problem, and the Myanmar military recently enacted a law that will be effective from October 1, 2024, requesting Myanmar migrant worker to pay 2% income tax. So that if there is 5 million Myanmar migrants in Thailand, they are going to pay 22 million per month to the Myanmar military in tax. Another is about the Myanmar military is also requesting the MOU worker, people who migrated to the government to government G2G, they have to pay, they have to send their remittance 25% within the last 3 months from July 30 to this August 1st. So in exchange of if they do not pay tax or if they do not pay remit the 25% of their income, they wouldn't be able to extend their passport or their work visa. On the other hand, if we look at India, Indian is not a signature to 1951 and also 1967 a protocol that maybe give protection to the refugee who are fleeing from Myanmar. However, Indian is not, and labeling them as illegal or undocumented migrants from Myanmar. During the 2021, the Indian government ordered the state governments in the border region, especially in Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, and Tripura, to close or to secure and turn away back those fleeing Myanmar violence. Especially the central government's policy is being implemented in Manipur, in contrary to Mizoram state. The Manipur government, the Manipur state government is conducting survey and also collecting biometrics so that the Manipur governments can deport back to Myanmar and already deporting back to some of them. So the Myanmar refugee, or we can say undocumented migrants, in India facing limited access to basic services because of the lack of the UNHCRs and the UN's and the central government recognition that they are a refugee. So there is no international aid intervention until today that their basic need to be met. So especially the lack of green drinking waters also affecting their health, and detention especially in Manipur, and exposure to the biometric and the threat for return. And also in Manipur, increased tension between the host community and refugee in Manipur because of the communal violence that's happened last year. So the Manipur state government also blaming the Myanmar refugee for involving in that attack. In the meantime, the Myanmar militaries are enacting the military conception law that will require compulsory to age 18 to 35 for humans and for men and women for 18 to 27. However, recently the Myanmar military also expanded that conception law, and the men will be eligible to be served 18 to 65. The consequence of not complying that conception will be uh like sharing we can say in fun they have to pay maybe fine or maybe in prison. So only people who could afford paying money for bribe corruption can be able to avoid that conception. Despite the conception law in Myanmar, that's pushed a lot of people to migrate to Thai or India for safety and security. The Thai government is deporting over 140,000 during the last 6 months. At the same time, in India also deporting the Manipur state also deporting back to Myanmar refugee in during the last month. So especially the people who were being deported to Myanmar are vulnerable for the military recruitments for soldier. And here, according to the source, by RFA, people who couldn't pay for the bribery, they are being forced to be served in the military. And the challenge is not only for the Myanmar refugee or undocumented, it's also for students. The Myanmar military is requesting the Myanmar student in Thailand, their passport must be renewed in Myanmar. That means people who return back to Myanmar face uncertain future, whether they can come back to Thailand for study or not. So the number of refugee or undocumented migrants has risen significantly in Thailand, and also then the community also some community also have a positive attitude towards Myanmar refugee, but some are not. So recently, it seemed that a coalition from Thai civil society that and the migrant worker has proposed dropping a request a policy that they want to send to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The first is about the Convention of Children, and that should be revoked and reinstate to the original form to maintain its limitation. Another one is about the healthcare for migrants, and they said parents are responsible and they are working, so children healthcare for children shouldn't be provided. And another is about to renew the Thai citizenship program. Another is about the migrant worker in Thailand. They need to stay only 90 days and then they have to go back to Myanmar under the immigration plan. Then they have to come back 90 days and apply for 90 days, which is not um, possible because for many people in the meantime of Myanmar situation, if we look in the Myanmar situation. And the last thing that I want to say is about here is that the draft that regarding the child the pregnant woman, they are not allowed migrant worker to give a birth in Thailand, and they said they should return to their home country to give birth. Only after giving birth they will be granted a fixed 90-day work permit without the need to apply for a work permit. So I think the other thing I can reach later because I can sell the PowerPoint later. So in summary, I want to keep it short. Undocumented migrants in Myanmar and Thailand or refugee, political refugee will face continued deportation, arrest, and vulnerability. Especially the directive from the Myanmar military mandating 25 remittance for the MOU worker, 2% tax on all the migrant workers in return of their work permits, and the renewed requirements for ID and passport are expecting to increasingly the population of undocumented migrant workers in Thailand and their vulnerability, and also the student that they need to renew their passport exclusion in Myanmar will anticipate the rise of the undocumented migrant worker in events from the student. So I have just a small, I don't know how to give a recommendation at the moment because it's very complicated. Recently, also I heard the Thai government is going to approve that the CI, which we call is the cabinet resolution that will allow the undocumented migrants to be able to register, and then they can apply for 2-year legal status in Thailand and are eligible to work. So, but I do not see yet that is officially coming out. So this is just my recommendation, and Thai government need to also ensure that migrants or refugees are protected under the international law, and also recognizing their contribution to the economic of Thailand. Yeah. So that's it from my side.
Thank you very much, Tual. Could I just mention to people that if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll direct them to the speakers at the end, unless anyone had any question of clarification now before I call, excuse me, Eve to speak to us. No? Okay, so put your questions in the chat, as I said. Eve, can I call on you, please?
Thank you, Joe. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you
Perfect.
can. Good, excellent. That's good to hear. And sorry, I'm just trying to work out my lighting here. Okay. So look, thank you, and thank you very much, Tual, for those comments. I think they were really useful. It certainly leaves me with lots of questions. But I guess what I wanted to do this evening is to talk a bit about the law and the legal frameworks, but also about attitudes towards migrant workers and undocumented migrant workers. So yeah, I'm a lawyer, but I think attitudes actually matter more than anything, and I guess changing attitudes changes everything. And so what I wanted to do was to start by talking about a document that was produced by the ILO, which it came out in June 2021, and it was called Public Attitudes Towards Migrant Workers in Thailand. And it was part of a 4-country study by the ILO and UN Women. There was covered Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. And in essence, it surveyed public perspectives on migrant workers, and it noted that there was a marked deterioration over the 10-year period from 2010 in public attitudes towards migrant workers. But the key policy recommendations that came out of it, there were essentially 4. One was about promoting inclusion and community engagement. One was about raising awareness about the contribution that migrant workers make to the national economy. The third was about leveraging positive public support for women migrant workers. And the fourth was about addressing declining attitudes of employers to women domestic workers. Now, of course, I'm very conscious that this report that research brief was pre-coup. And so the landscape has changed enormously, and there's been, of course, as Tual was saying, a significant increase in the number of undocumented migrant workers. But I still think it's worth thinking about what public attitudes were then and how we might be able to engage that and think about the international legal issues that could help us to address those. So in essence, with those 4 recommendations, there's quite a lot of detail in this report. I'm happy to provide the link if anybody's interested in it, but it was talking about campaigns and awareness raising campaigns that humanize people. It was talking about public awareness through schools and public education programs, about debunking myths. For example, views on migrant workers being more likely to be engaged in crime. It was looking at tackling stigma and using inclusive language and valuing the work that migrant workers do. And then it also seemed to be looking at picking the things that are doable and achievable. So noting that there was interest in migrant workers who were women, domestic work and pregnancy. So I think it's really noticeable, and I'd really like to hear more from Tual about the proposal of this coalition that women should return to Myanmar to have their babies. So I think that was an interesting dimension. And then it talks about research, obviously giving evidence to support the arguments. Regulations are factored in there, and international law in terms of guidance and standard setting. And there was another interesting point about city planning and questions of integration and overcrowding, because migrant workers often are isolated within communities. So it seems to me that the attitudes and the sort of the pre-existing conditions for migrant workers is an interesting context for us to think about. And then we see the overlay of the developments since the coup and the recent changes that Tual was describing about the 2% income tax, the 25% requirement for remittances to be 25% of income, which seemed to me the most extraordinary measures for turning the vulnerability of migrant workers completely on its head, in the sense that mostly when we're looking at the vulnerability of migrant workers, we're thinking about the situation that they're in the country in which they're working, rather than their vulnerability being exacerbated from both sides of the equation. Anyway, I'll talk through some of the international and regional standards. I don't want to bore you with them, but I thought it might be useful to think about how we can actually harness those standards to give effect to the recommendations that I've described before, and think about what it means in the current context. And I thought it was worth starting with ASEAN. So rather than going to the international standards first, if we start with ASEAN, we've actually had some really interesting developments in the ASEAN context over the last few years. So in 2023, there was the ASEAN Declaration protecting migrant workers and families in crisis situations. And basically that is a document that stems from COVID and the Global Compact on Migration, which was adopted in 2018. And it's part of, I think, a general trend in the region to address the realities of migrant workers. And I think it's worth remembering that even though we're dealing with a particularly challenging situation in Thailand, I haven't really mentioned India, but I think that's more a refugee context, but Tual may have a different view, so we can discuss it later. But I think that general trend is something that we can engage and usefully so. So the other, I'll just mention 2 other documents that are fairly recent developments as well, both ASEAN. So the ASEAN Declaration on Portability of Social Security Benefits for Migrant Workers. And there are guidelines accompanying the declaration, and obviously the guidelines are really important in terms of thinking about how how the statements of principle can actually be put into action. So that was introduced with a focus on ensuring that migrant workers can transfer their social security benefits across ASEAN member states. And that's obviously a critical aspect for those who move for work within the region. If I can just jump for a second to the convention relating to the status of refugees, there's a whole history of siloing refugees and migrant workers and imagining that somehow a migrant worker can't be a refugee and vice versa. I think one of the most interesting provisions, I'm probably one of two people who are actually in the world who are interested in this provision, but never mind that. One of the most interesting provisions in the convention relating to the status of refugees is Article 24, and it's about the right to social security of refugees. And what's interesting about it is it's a very detailed provision in ways that other provisions in the convention relating to the status of refugees are not. And the detail that it contains is all drawn from an ILO convention relating to the labour rights of migrants. So I think we've got actually recognition at a very early stage of the significance of labour legislation and social security and so on in the convention relating to the status of refugees that is no longer really plays much of a role in the conversation, but I think we could do more with. So coming back to ASEAN, so just thinking about the significance of social security, it's actually a really old idea that social security matters to migrant workers, but it's absolutely fantastic that something like this has actually emerged in through ASEAN. So then there's the other one is 2019 ASEAN Declaration on the Rights of Children in the Context of Migration, and that recognises the particular needs and vulnerabilities of children. That's obviously important and picks up on issues such as detention and access to health and so on. So I guess the general point there is that all of these documents are really important in acknowledging vulnerabilities, but also in helping us to reduce risk factors and promote safe migration for migrant workers. So it's recognising the reality of migrant work and the importance of ensuring that it's safe. Of course, the challenges for undocumented migrant workers remain, and irregular migration always increases during times of conflict, as we can see in this particular context. And I think my understanding is that almost all people from Myanmar in Thailand at the moment are working, and almost all of them are doing so informally. But I'm not sure of the specific stats on that. So the other point, of course, is that people get pushed into irregular and vulnerable situations in different ways, and just as Tual was very usefully explaining before. So then the other, I guess I started with ASEAN because that's an easier tool for us to use in the region, but the other fairly recent instrument is the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. So that was adopted in 2018. And it's been billed as the first ever UN global agreement on a common approach to international migration. It's not legally binding, but it is based on binding international standards, so it does matter. But I think actually the most important thing, again, I'm focusing here on Thailand, is that Thailand is a champion country. So promoting the Global Compact on Migration, and they're very proud of their champion status. I think it's fair to say, and this has been my observation, that it's that Thailand's been more active on the immigration detention component, and in particular looking for alternatives to immigration detention, especially for children. But I think there's a lot that we can make of the champion status of Thailand there. The other thing is there are a couple of big ticks that we can give to Thailand in relation to providing education to children. I was just talking to someone this afternoon who's just back from Thailand, and she'd been speaking to some women from Myanmar who were migrant workers, and they were talking about their children being able to get access to education. There are birth registration issues, and that has implications for statelessness. And I think, Tual, I think you have a particular interest in that too. Am I running out of time? I can't hear you. Sorry.
A couple more minutes.
A couple more minutes. So I'm getting close.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe. So then, of course, we've got the Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers, important set of standards. Couple of problems. Thailand's not a state party, and it doesn't cover irregular migrant workers. And we always come back to the heightened risks of people in a vulnerable situation. It doesn't cover irregular migrant workers, and it explicitly excludes refugees. So I think there's an interesting discussion for us to have about how we think about people who are in Thailand, whether they're migrant workers, undocumented migrant workers, or refugees. Then the convention relating to the status of refugees, I mentioned before, Article 24, but of course Thailand is not a state party. India also is not a state party. Ratification in the region is very rare. Ratification frenzy in Cambodia after the Paris Peace Accords led to Cambodia signing on, but I think it's only Cambodia and the Philippines, as far as I recall, that are parties. So the part of the problem there is a history of Eurocentricity in relation to that convention. But key provisions are the principle of non-refoulement. So people cannot be forced to return to their country of origin if they face persecution. And there's this notion of constructive refoulement, which is forcibly returning, creating conditions that effectively force people to return. So it would be interesting to think about that in the context of the cycle of mobility of undocumented migrant workers. Definition of refugee, I guess the only point really worth making there is that conscientious objection to conscription, which is obviously a big issue here, is a possible ground for refugee status, but not necessarily, and it can be complicated. We can talk about that further if you want to. And then there are other standards. I won't go into those. But of course, there's the broad range of social and economic rights and civil and political rights standards and ILO conventions. And I think Tual mentioned the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the proposal to withdraw from that. That would be a big call to withdraw from the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and I think that's highly unlikely. So I think that's it from me. I've got questions, but for Tual, but I think that others that should be in others. That ball should be in others' courts.
No, I invite you to ask questions too. We've had two wonderful presentations. Thank you, Eve. That was really splendid. And thank you very much, Tual, for both the delivery and the excellent PowerPoints. We've got 5 questions so far, and Eve should put one in. I think we've got another one just come in now, but I'll just take them in the order that they were posted and ask them of who seems to be the person they're directed to or to both of the speakers. And the first one was from Chris, and his question was, what restrictions, this is Chris Lamb, what restrictions on access to education at all levels apply to undocumented people? So would you like to have a bash at that, Tual? And then Eve, you might want to.
Okay. Thank you so much for the question about the children education. Um, uh, Both Thailand and India, Indian, I mean, like in Mizoram state, allow the student, uh, of the refugee, to go to school in the public school. In Thailand, mostly or under the law, they are allowed to go to public school, but mostly they go to the migrant learning center in Thailand. There are over, I think, over 600 nearly migrant learning center across in Thailand. And however, sadly, recently a number of the migrant learning center which are not like officially registered, maybe are being closed by the Thai government recently, just a few months ago and a few weeks ago. So in India, in Mizoram state, they can go to school, but in order to go to higher education, like college in India is another challenge. They can go to class until class 12. In Thailand too, they can graduate in like grade 12 in the migrant learning center. But if they want to go to college, then they need to get the GED, and then they can have, if they get the GED, then they can go to migrants like college, but I think then they have to have a document. So far in Thailand, children under 18 are freedom, they are allowed to travel within the country freely, but getting to higher education is another challenge also for the migrants or refugee in Thailand.
Did you want to add anything, Eve?
Oh, thanks, Joe. Look, just from a rights perspective, that there is, under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, there is a right to access primary education and, if it's available, secondary education, but accessing tertiary education is a nightmare in a lot of places.
Yeah. There's also, if I can interpolate something here, this is an issue for Rohingya in particular in Cox's Bazar and other places, about the local language and accessing things, because the previous regime or government in Bangladesh discouraged the learning of Bangla among refugees and people at Cox's Bazar, precisely because of this restriction that they were hoping that people would go home and not integrate into education systems. So there, without, we can't ignore the difficulty of mounting education programs locally. I mean, obviously refugee delivered ones are a different thing. Okay, thank you. We've got the next question was actually answered already online, but I just want to ask this person who asked, that's Tinta Nu. Has your question been answered? You asked about illegal migration, and Tual replied that there are only undocumented or irregular migrants, no illegal migration. Can we leave that, or did you want to persist with the question?
Maybe because it's just like I just answer about the terminology.
Sure.
Yeah,
Because no one is illegal migrants or
yeah, yeah.
illegal
Yeah,
people.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I present
Yeah.
in the wrong way.
It's
What
not
I
a
mean.
problem. It's
Mm,
not a problem. I just want to clarify the terminology
yeah,
because
yeah. Thank you for that.
because no worry.
Uh,
And in Thailand, in Malacca, there is a nine
yeah,
temporary refugee camp, and they are under the border consortium and also under the UNHCR, and the UNHCR is looking after them in the Myla camp.
right.
The urban migrants are facing actually challenges in Thailand. like especially people from defecting from like soldier or even from police, police,
Mm.
they can't even get registration in Thailand, many of them. So I've been contacted by some soldier. I transfer them to, I pay money for their transportation to go to Malaysia through
I see.
illegal way, because in Malaysia, Malaysian is not a 1951 refugees signature. However, Malaysian allow registration for those fleeing from Myanmar to register. Whether they get the protection or not, I'm not sure, but they can register.
Right.
So in Thailand still they don't, because of they are aware that if they do registration, looking at the country in Myanmar now, over 18 million people are humanitarian in need, and around 5 million are urgent need. So many people will come to Thailand or India if they give that registration. So they cannot do, I think the country is not, is aware that they won't be able to handle the massive population coming in.
I saw in the 1988 uprising. There's a lot of Myanmar people staying in the big camps like Weji, and I've been there, and for that reason, we try to help from here. But sometimes also I heard that there are some UNHCR help. So that's what I want to know. Is there some help, or if people can stay in one group in some selected sub area? Uh, yeah. In that case, we all can help from this end. Is it possible?
Is that a question to Tual? Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead. Okay, Tual?
I sorry that I have no any like very concrete answer for that, because it's very
Okay. Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated. And another thing is these children who have, want to do the higher part of education, we can help as a group of some people from Australia. We can give like Zoom, um, lectures, whatever. If we can organize, that will be good. I think I would like to help.
Thank you for that. I think if you want to help, like the under the different initiative in the border area, I think they actually need a lot of volunteer teacher, including English,
Yeah, I've been
even
there to Chiang
yeah,
Mai. There's been
yeah.
some. Yeah,
So you may contact with some like migrant
yeah.
organization in
Okay. I
Thailand
have
or
contacted some of them. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
That's a very good point there. Thank you very much to you both. The next question was mine, so I think I'll skip it because actually Eve made the point about whether conscientious objectors have a right to refugee status. I was probing into that space and something different. But the one after mine was from Fio, and the question is, could you share your thoughts on the stance of Thai or Indian authorities regarding migrant workers, refugees, and new arrivals from Myanmar following the coup? What are the key dimensions of their state policies and foreign relations concerning this issue? So, would you like to start with that, Tual?
Thank you so much for the question. I think the answer is very similar to what I have said earlier, because after the 2001 military coup, Thai and Indian aware that they wouldn't be able to handle, or they if they give the registration. Of course, then the other thing is about looking at about the foreign policy. That is not actually foreign relation. That is not my expert, but um. I assume that they have their interest in Myanmar, and that's why what I'm assuming is that why a lot of people are being deported even after the conception is because I don't know. I assume that there might be uh uh the G2G, right, the Thai government and the military discussion to deport that back those because of Myanmar militaries lacking manpower on the ground. So in exchange of their interest, if we look at Thai Indian authority or Indian government has the look its policy that trying the highway connecting to Mae Sao, then to Vietnam, Laos, all this, and also in Kalatan port in Rakhine State. They have a big investment in Myanmar. At the same time, Thai government also have the oil and gas, the gas from Myanmar. So they need to balance, like a kind of balancing balancing with any authority that they can be able to get secure their national interests. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I cannot give you a very concrete answer for that. Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to allow registration shortly because of the ongoing crisis in Myanmar. People will come more and more.
Did you want to add? Thank you very much, Tual. Did you want to add something, Eve?
Look, I think probably not. I guess I'm thinking, because I've noticed Caitlin's question as well, which kind of ties into the same thing.
I'm coming to that, yeah.
Sorry. And so I guess what I'm thinking about is what's going to be the least inflammatory approach to be taken in a country of refuge, if we want to call it that. And it may be that giving people refugee status, whether we like it or not, even though it's supposed to be an apolitical act, of course it isn't. And in a country like Thailand and also in India, refugee status doesn't necessarily carry a lot of protection anyway. So what I wonder is whether the pressure could be on giving migrant workers, regularizing undocumented migrant workers status as a less provocative way of giving people at least an opportunity for protection. And often people in that situation, I mean, we know that migrant work is a reality. People don't actually want to move on. They just want to be secure where they are. And if they can be secure as migrant workers, maybe that will suffice for them. That sounds, it'd be refugee lawyers around the world horrified by me saying that, but it's just trying to be realistic. Does that help?
Okay. Thank you. It certainly does. I'll call Matthias, who's got his hand up to speak, and then I'll resume with the sequence of questions in the chat. So,
yeah, thank you for giving me the floor. I'm Matthias Voss from UNHCR Yangon, but I previously worked for a couple of years in Bangkok, also with UNHCR. And I wanted to actually to say a few words also on Caitlin's question on what the Australian government can actually do to improve the situation. And I mean, I'm as you, Eve, I'm also a lawyer, and I'm more actually concerned by the fact that neither India nor Thailand has proper refugee status determination procedures. So if we talk about refugees in these two countries, they are not recognized by the respective governments as such and given any kind of status. Both of these countries have not ratified the Refugee Convention. So I think this is a crucial point that we have to keep in mind. I think I'm very glad that you see Thailand as a champion country on the global compact on migration. Just as another example, Thailand is also a champion country to end statelessness. And since they have joined this diplomatic initiative, being a champion, the number of stateless persons has increased from 500 to 560,000. And I'm just only talking about the domestic stateless persons. So I think Thailand is really fantastic at taking diplomatic initiative. But what's really happening on the ground is a different situation. And the rights and status of people who came as undocumented migrants to Thailand is really, really bad. If you talk, for instance, about conscientious objection, I mean, I've just received reports today for about 27 people who fled the draft, who have been subject to refoulement by Thailand. They were refoulled to Myanmar. So this is the reality that's happening on the ground. I think we should also talk a little bit more about trafficking and smuggling. And Australia, of course, is fantastic in taking a lead within the Bali process. We have recently seen a very strong increase in numbers of people from Myanmar who are subject to first smuggling. They resort to a broker, and then they somehow end up trafficked. And I think we can also see that the current Thai government, after the big success in fighting human trafficking, is now a little bit in a lull where they say, oh, maybe we don't have to fight so seriously anymore. The danger is not that high. But I think we also have to see that hundreds of thousands of these people, the 3 to 5 million that UNDP assumes are in Thailand, hundreds of thousands of them are really in horrible working conditions, very close to victims of human trafficking, or they are really held like victims of human trafficking. And I think that's something where maybe Australia can, on the basis of this knowledge, really also be a little bit more effective. Maybe just one last word, change in attitudes after the coup. I think in India and in Thailand, we see actually a more restrictive policy. There's tendencies to close the borders, especially from the union level in India and overall from Thailand are very, very strong. So the willingness to let people in has definitely not increased, and conscription is also not a reason that would lead them to increase the admission of people in the country. Yeah, then that's a few ideas from my perspective. Hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Did Eve or Tual want to add anything to that about what, especially in relations, because we might as well absorb Caitlin's question about what Australia can do or could do? Just quickly, because
I'll just say I'm delighted that that Matthias is here and that he was able to make that contribution, because I think it was really useful, really useful. Yeah,
really was. Yes.
Thank you.
Tual, do you want to say anything?
No.
Okay, then we have a question that's about documents and specifically in relation to Thailand, and I've just got to find it. Can refugees hold documents in Thailand, or is it considered a hindrance when they leave? Some say yes, some say no. This is to ask this question, TWA. I'm still wondering if I can hold the documents or not. Without documents, I face many challenges with the police. Some of us came to Thailand because of CDM and their families. Is there any comment you want to make about document holding in relation to status in Thailand?
Thank you for the question. I think if you have the UNHCR protection, I think it is okay not to hold. But if you are still applying for like refugee status, I think it's better to hold for your safety, because you never know when you will get the UNHCR protection. So in case situation better, also you can leave, or you can maybe if you have the passport, why not you go to Philippines? They have the 1951 Refugee Convention. You can have the right to work. So there, or Cambodia. Cambodia is a signature country. So this is like some of my surprise for many people. Why not they go to like Philippines? Why not they go to Cambodia? Who signed the signature? Who signed the 1951 Refugee Convention? Yeah, that's my suggestion.
Thank you. Did you want to say something quickly? We're running out of time. We'll be able to take one last question, but we'll have to take that briefly. But did you want to add anything to that, Eve, now?
Yeah, just to say that just because a country is a signatory to the Refugee Convention doesn't actually mean they honour their obligations. And I think that's a really important thing to remember as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you both for those comments. I think this might have to be the last question. It's from Kosat. What is the position of the government of India in terms of hosting Myanmar arrivals in both Mizoram and Manipur? Instead of pushing back preventing entry, we have deportation in Manipur in June and how far is biometric data collection? How far will biometric data collection impact on Myanmar arrivals in those two areas in India? Can you throw any light on that?
Thank you so much, Gulsat. I think in terms of the Indian response to Myanmar refugee, is not positive. And however, the Mizoram state government is not accepting to collect the biometric, which despite the request from the central government, but people in Manipur will might face that continue pressure and also face the biometric and a threat of deportation and arrest in Manipur. So that is one thing, yeah, so far. So yeah, that's all. In the so far and also the Indian government is now making the border fencing which the free movement regime trying to make like the Donald Trump war or the Great War. So border fencing. So the it's not a good sign for people who are living in Manipur. Better to move to Mizoram if possible.
Right. Interesting. We've come to 7 o'clock, and I just want to
Sorry,
say,
Joseph, can I just quickly add a few things on my last questions?
so who was that?
Kusat?
Oh yes, go ahead.
Yeah, from my second question. So we're hearing about the biometric data collection Mizoram. So people from Mizoram, Myanmar rivals, they're very much concerning about this data if it goes with the sack through the central government. So what's your reading at this point? How this will impact people from Mizoram, right, and Myanmar rivals. So that's my things that I want to know. And my second question, thank you.
Thank you so much. So far, the former chief minister and the new chief minister are not giving consent for collection. So I think that within the next 1 or 2 years, it may not be happen.
Thank you.
Because the chief minister have the authority in the state in Mizoram because it's a federal state. So and the chief minister is also saying that Chin people or the people from Myanmar in that border area are blood, and we cannot turn the oblige eye to the people suffering from Myanmar.
All right. All right. Well, thank you to Eve and Tual for the great detail and preparation you put into your talks, and to everyone for participating and asking any questions. There's a lot of gratitude being expressed in the chat. Some people want to see the PowerPoints if that's possible. We'll let people know.
May I add something? It's not only PowerPoint. The whole presentation will be on AMI website, Facebook,
Yes.
and also LinkedIn. So you can get it or download it from the website or LinkedIn or Facebook. And
That's right.
next month's seminar will be October 28th, and that is from Shantana. So don't miss that. That will be the last Monday of October 28th. Thank you.
So 28th of October, Chantanelle, we'll see you then. Thank you, everybody, for your participation, especially our two wonderful speakers. Good night, everyone.